Mourning geckos. One of the first ever gecko species I've ever kept. I think the number of babies and eggs confirm that I'm doing something right. These tiny lizards are incredibly popular in the reptile keeping hobby. Some people even house them with other species, usually dart frogs. Generally, I wouldn't recommend this as they often have different care specifications and can even collide with each other in extreme circumstances. But in the right viv, it can be done and has so by many. As with all pets, I'd always suggest starting off with the intention of a species only enclosure. It's definitely my preferred method. Not only is this best for the animal, as you can design the enclosure purely with that species in mind, but it also helps you learn the species and get used to keeping them before taking on the responsibility and added danger of a mixed enclosure. These guys are known as arboreal lizards, meaning they like to climb, spending much of their time in the trees in the wild, rarely or never touching the ground. They'll be much more comfortable in a taller enclosure. If it's long but short, it's no good. This also means you should provide plenty of branches, hiding spots, and climbing points. More branches give the geckos more areas to move, expanding the surface area of the enclosure. Hiding spots help them feel comfortable, often the case with shy creatures. The more places to hide, the more you see them. It sounds silly, but if they've got multiple options to escape and be safe, they'll be much more comfortable venturing out into the open. Cork bark is perfect for this. I simply stuck it on with some aquarium silicone, stuck some sphagnum moss on it, let it cure, and we were good to go. A couple plants, soil, and clean-up crew later, the enclosure is fully built, and in my opinion, quite nice to look at. I do prefer a natural setup. The cleanup crew break down the gecko waste, so the plants can absorb it, meaning I don't need to clean the enclosure. So long as the plants and inverts are happy, I know my mini ecosystem's running well. These geckos enjoy a high humidity, generally around 70%. A light spray once a day does the job, with a heavier spray once a week. Although this all depends on how much ventilation your enclosure has. The more ventilation, the less humidity. But no ventilation makes for a stagnant enclosure. Just attempt to reach that happy medium with healthy airflow. Plants and wood also help keep a high humidity. Condensation on the glass and general dryness of the plants and soil should tell you all you need to know. Check by the end of the day. If it's bone dry, you need to spray some more. If it's soaked, you need to spray a little less. And just an FYI, hygrometers often sold in shops don't perform an accurate job. Although they're a nocturnal species, they should still be supplied with a UV light. They can survive without one, but it's a case of better safe than sorry. They're unlikely to develop the diseases many reptiles would without UV, but why risk it? It also helps give them a healthy day-night cycle. I generally leave mine on for 10 hours a day. using an LED bulb alongside it to help show off the enclosure. Enjoying temperatures around 24 to 30 degrees. They'll use a heat lamp if you give them one. Great for their health, and essentially enrichment. Luckily my reptile shed keeps a happy ambient temperature for them. But to reach this in your home, many keepers use heat mats located on the back wall of the enclosure. This works best on glass vivariums. And always use a thermostat. Thermostats allow you to set the temp the heat mat gets to. Without one, the heat mat will run as hot as it possibly can, bringing about a very dangerous fire hazard. As far as food comes, these geckos are known to be constant egg layers, so they need a good source of calcium. I use Rapashi. There's multiple flavours to keep them interested. It's a good source of calcium and they love it. Bottle caps act as an easy bowl. Just soak them in Milton with warm water for cleaning. You can also feed them fresh fruit on occasion. Just be aware of the high sugar content. For a source of protein, once or twice a week, I feed fruit flies. A big tub of calcium powder spread along the top stops the flies from running loose. They won't fly away as they have curled wings. When they reach the calcium powder, they lose grip and fall down. When there's enough, you can simply tap the tubs to move them where you want. Some keepers dust their feeder bugs with supplements and calcium powder. If you choose to do so, be stingy. It's common for keepers to coat their flies heavily, giving their geckos too much calcium. Just keep an eye on the eggs and calcium sacs on the side of the gecko's neck. Softer, almost liquid eggs indicate a higher need for calcium. If the calcium sacs become engorged, then you're feeding too much calcium. I've found that Rapashi provides them with the exact amount they need, so there's no need to dust the bugs. As far as water comes, supply a water bowl for the all-important just in case, but they'll often lap up the water you've sprayed. The downside of this species, they're nocturnal. While I think it's fascinating, before they had babies, there were weeks at a time that I wouldn't see the geckos, so our schedules just didn't overlap. I often missed out on the chance to enjoy my pets, and instead just topped up food to find an empty bowl in the morning. On the topic of babies, don't make my mistake. I've housed them in an enclosure that's more than suitable for 3 adults, but there's now roughly 12 babies in the enclosure. They bred much faster than expected. All growing, so now I'm faced with the fun task of building a new enclosure, then catching and moving the speedy, delicate, jumpy babies. There's not a lot of chance of avoiding babies with mourning geckos. A rare circumstance, these incredible little lizards are known as a parthenogenic species, meaning males are almost non-existent as females lay viable eggs without fertilization, essentially creating mini clones of themselves. All of my adults are female. The giveaway is the femoral pause. At certain times, you may be able to spot an egg or two brewing inside one of the adults. Because of their breeding nature, either invest in a secure enclosure with no gaps, or research how to gecko-proof an enclosure. The babies will exploit any small holes in the glass or gaps in the netting. Of course, these guys are extremely small and delicate. They're also fast as anything. So if you want a pet you can handle, these aren't the guys to go for. Some keepers manage to make theirs comfortable enough to crawl onto their hands, but that's not overly common with this often timid species. Anyway, I think that's all bases covered. If you've any further questions about anything, or if you think I've missed something, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm more than happy to help if I'm able to. Otherwise, these guys are very rewarding pets, and I just love watching them go about their business and interact with each other, so hopefully you will too.